welcome back to Tom's Engaging HR, where we are committed to engaging with HR practitioners across all functions, those that serve the HR community and leaders that are focused on making work better. We're driven by those three core goals: humanize HR leaders, gain and share real insights to help make the world of work better, and have fun along the way. So let's go. Super excited for our guest today, Matt Meadows. He is the CEO and co-founder of WorkStory, where he's working to reshape the landscape of performance management. Matt brings a wealth of experience from his time in various startups, working in a variety of leadership capacities, from account management to marketing to customer relations. His entrepreneurial journey is marked by a relentless pursuit of efficiency and effectiveness in the workplace, which led him to co-found WorkStory. Frustrated by the outdated and time-consuming traditional performance reviews that failed to foster real improvement, Matt has envisioned a new way forward. We're going to talk a lot about that journey today. Welcome to Tom's Engaging HR, Matt.
No, thanks, Tom. I'm very excited. Avid listener, so I'm very excited to be on this side for a change.
I love it. It's been a long time coming. I know we were trying to get going on the previous podcast, and I think we were delayed a good 6 months. So really appreciate you sticking with us and
No, of
being
course.
here today.
Yeah, no, sure. Again, the relaunch I think has been quite exciting to follow. So I'm just glad to contribute and be part of the conversation.
Excellent. Well, it's going to be a great conversation. It's our second time doing a video, so pretty exciting. So I could talk about your Nashville Music City poster
Right,
behind
exactly.
you.
I tried to dress it up a little. Things are chaotic over here. So
Yeah, it looks good. Are you a big music guy?
sort of, kind of. I'm not. Look, I like my things, but like, the backstory of this specifically is, or for those on the podcast who can't see it, the Nashville poster. My now wife, I guess, went to Vanderbilt, and we had a trip to Nashville once upon a time and stopped by Hat Show Print, which is a big print shop there. I'm a big fan of like graphic design and posters and things like that. So that's
Awesome. That's it's a great one. I can take the picture and even put it into show notes. So
perfect.
even our audio listeners will
Yeah.
be able to get a flair for the
Cool.
cool poster. I've got music posters all over the place. Definitely a passion of mine. So are you in the new house? I understand you went through the house buying process recently.
Yes. No, thanks for asking. So my plan was, actually had a call just before this. My plan was get out that call, run over to the new house, set myself up with a nice looking setup for the video for the podcast. But I had an email come up that took a little bit of my time, so I was not able to run over there. So not technically the new house as of right now. Officially moving Saturday though. So everything outside of the context of this view, which you can see me or hear me from, it's chaos over
Boxes.
here. So it's bad.
Well, I applaud you. That's sort of the entrepreneurial way to go about it. A lot of people would be, yeah, Tom, I want to do the podcast, but I'm going to catch up with you in about 8 weeks when I get settled.
No, let's do it.
You're like, let's do it. It's in front of me. Let's tackle this thing. Yeah, I mean, you got in, I don't know what it's like in Florida where you're at, but in Denver, the market, at least where I'm at in South Denver, is about to explode for the next 3 months with everybody overbidding $100,000, waiving inspections and guaranteeing appraisal, all that nonsense. It's just crazy here. Is that kind of the same back
No,
your way?
same. Absolutely same. We, I guess, a quick story. When we checked out this house that we eventually bought, we ended up seeing 2 homes on the same day, and we wanted offers in on both of them. But by the time we could inform our realtor that we put an offer in later that evening, the first house we had seen had already been purchased for cash, asking price offer. So it was just like immediately we couldn't even have that option. But it's, I mean, even South Florida, or people who visit South Florida know a lot of Northeasterners. So we were at the DMV not too long ago, and person next to us, she was joking, the person helping them, saying, yeah, I'm from Long Island, changing my license. A lot of people are doing that. So yeah, that's the deal. I mean, I'm sure it's similar, as you mentioned, in Denver, but like so many people flocking down here, no inventory, prices are sky high. It's crazy. So
it's something I bet most of the listeners can probably relate to, because everyone I talk to, no matter what city it is, unless you're in a small town, kind of outside of a major city, everybody has the same report, which is no inventory, total insanity, everybody trying to move here. It's pretty universally tough buying a house right now.
Yeah, no, not a great time right now. So yeah, we'll see how things go. Maybe 3 to 6 months from now. But
Hasn't been a great time for like 7 years. So
right, yeah, that's right. That's also true. Sometimes you just got to bite the bullet. So.
Well, that's awesome. So I feel like there's some tie-in, with kind of our main topic here, performance management, coming from that house buying
Yeah.
experience. There's a lot of going on in the space. Everyone's got opinions. There's kind of that transition from the old way of buying a house to the new realities of buying a house. And, we're starting to see that market change. I'm starting to see lots of articles about how realtors are starting to get squeezed and pinched out. And,
Mhm.
just that whole world is changing for better or worse. But I also feel like performance management is one of those. It's been going on for years, but I just feel like there's so much green space and need for change, and a lot of people don't want the change. A lot of people are kind of still doing the old, or they're just like, why can't it be like it used to be? But at the same time, I really feel like there's a need, especially in the performance management space, because it's universal. Whether you're doing reviews or you're doing one-on-one feedback or there's a system in place, you have to be able to give people feedback on their performance one way or the other. And I feel like you've found it to be a little bit broken too, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And right, similar to your analogy in the real estate space, I think, software solutions becoming a big way in which people are solving problems is leading this new way. To answer your question more directly, yeah, it's basically, I mean, in my personal experience, whenever I've had to be a part of, a recipient of, or give performance reviews, it's always a terrible experience for one reason or another. And actually, the way that I open up all my discussions with people who sales calls or things like that is no one likes performance reviews. We all do them. We recognize they're important, but the way in which we do them is kind of poor, and it's been around for a very long time. People just don't know any differently. So yeah, they're bad, and we keep just being okay with them being the worst thing we have to do in an office environment, which is kind of why I decided to try to sit up and change things.
Yeah, I'm wearing my Nuggets hat here, big Denver Nuggets fan. But one of my friends I go to games with, he has season tickets. I get lucky enough to tag along once a month. But I remember it was either end of October, early November. We're driving to one of the games, and he's in leadership. I'll call him Jay, for the purposes of this story, not to, out him or his employer. But he's like, "Oh man, I'm getting into performance management. I got to do my review season." And he had a whole laundry list of stuff that was driving him nuts about it. Fast forward, I'm going to the Nuggets game with him the end of January, and we're chatting. He's like, "Oh man, I'm so excited. Next week, in February, I get to give my final review." And I went, "You've been doing this for 3 months, dude?" He's like, "Oh God, yeah. It's like my whole life has been performance reviews." I'm like, "That's a quarter of your year spent on performance reviews. Meanwhile, while you're doing the review and while you're giving the review, there's still a whole quarter that's maybe not in the
Right.
review."
There's
Like,
other stuff going on.
I was like, "Dude, like you were doing this. Like, that's insane. That's not how it should be." I was like, "I literally do a podcast. I literally go to work every day trying to like help companies not do that. Like, how much of your regular work are you not doing
Yeah. No,
because of
absolutely.
this
And that
thing?"
was, no, totally. That was, I mean, my personal experience, what, what led to the development of what we do was exactly that, not to that extreme, but it was that concept of to take time aside from the work we're doing to do performance reviews. And then we write them all up, which takes a lot of, work hours. Then we sit down, we have the conversations, which are a critical part of it, but that's more time taken. And then what we end up with is, these generic conversations typically, which are unhelpful. And that's just inherent to the fact that we do them less frequently than we should, or the mechanisms that are informing those conversations are not so fantastic. So that's really the reason. It wasn't as extreme as a month, but you're totally right. We take all
Right.
this time, and it doesn't really generally end up being helpful aside from whatever productivity we're losing in actually doing the process.
Yeah, and my girlfriend just got her review too, and her approach is like, let me just get this thing over with. I feel like I'm upset every time I come out of
Right.
a review, and I feel like for me too, like it's like this anxiety thing, and then no matter what it is, even when it's good, I still feel not great about the whole process on the receiving end either. There's just something about it that just pulls up my, I'm open to feedback, but it pulls up my barriers. It pulls up my insecurities. It
Yeah.
pulls up all these things that I just naturally feel like I need to, want to, or should push back on, even in a good review. So,
No, I feel like it's sort of just to, I guess, speak more casually about it. It sort of reinforces this adversarial relationship between you and your manager. If that's who's doing the review for you kind of are always put in this position of, I have to defend myself or have to make an argument for myself
yep.
versus them, which is totally not what performance reviews or performance management should be. It should be this like, we're working together to identify and set development goals so you can improve, but that's not the way 99%. So yeah, it does. Oh, not to mention that it could be a surprise too. If you only do it
Yeah.
once a year, you totally be surprised by what they're saying, which is not great. So I'm with you. It's not great. People don't look forward to it. It's not fun.
So let's talk about, WorkStory. It- what what's your approach? Like, what's your company about? What are you trying to accomplish? We can get into the weeds on it.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about WorkStory to get us started.
Yeah. Not to go too crazy, but yeah, essentially recognizing that performance reviews are terrible in the way that they're typically operated. The way we decided to approach it was, sort of why do people not like them? Why do we fall back into doing them the traditional way, which is once a year, twice a year, if you're lucky? And then like, why do they take so long and end up with these sort of generic outputs that aren't really effective? And so what we boiled it all down to after interviewing a bunch of people and trying to go across different industries was, it's this general idea of not giving enough feedback throughout the year, which leads to all of these other problems. So what WorkStory does is it basically takes your performance review, takes the questions you're going to be asking in a performance review, takes questions to solicit feedback, and sends them out continuously throughout the year, but using the tools that are already part of your workflow. So you're not having to like remember to go log into a system to go do stuff, which you just aren't naturally going to be doing or thinking about doing. So instead, if you use Microsoft Teams, Slack, WebEx, or even email, we basically just become part of your workflow. And every so often, we're asking you for input on someone you manage, someone you work with, depending on all these rules that you establish sort of on the front end. And you're providing feedback in this continuous fashion, and we can present it in real time to those team members. So what you end up with, the two major benefits are, from an operational standpoint, whenever you want to do performance review, whenever you want to check in, and whenever you need to talk about performance, you're ready to go. Information's already collected. Just look at the dashboard, pull out a report, have that conversation, knowing that it's informed by all this great stuff from the past 3, 6, 12 months, rather than you sitting down and filling out a survey. One is ease of use and time savings. The other benefit, arguably more important, is individual team members can see how well they're doing throughout the year. They get that feedback in real time, and they can be advocates for their growth. So the argument I make all the time is the way you're doing it's outdated. It's not really helping you. It's more of a box checking exercise. This way, which isn't adding any more time or effort, which may actually be saving time, is actually a more effective way of helping team members to grow. So that's kind of WorkStory in a minute, in a nutshell.
I mean, I love that. It's hard to disagree with that approach. I'm sure we'll get into some, like
Yeah.
why or why nots, but integrations, not going extra places, having continuous feedback that you can go back and see all your feedback for the year. Obviously, I would imagine, correct? So,
Absolutely. And we also have, and not to sound too salesy, but basically part of it is how visible do you want your feedback? Because not everyone is comfortable sharing feedback openly with one another. So you may not want to share it openly. You may need to share with a manager. So we sort of abide by all of those unwritten rules or things that people are concerned about. But yes, you can totally go back and read through and have an understanding of how well you're
So I want to go back to kind of the base here, continuous feedback. Like,
doing.
what does that mean to you? I came from the employee engagement space, and
Mhm.
if you survey too much, people get survey fatigue and don't want to keep doing surveys. What does continuous feedback mean to you in this conversation?
Yeah, no, very, very similarly, we want to avoid fatigue with our process. It's surveying, but to a sort of a lesser degree in terms of like one-off question ask. But and to avoid that, when it comes to continuous feedback, what I feel it is taking what managers already are saying, what they want to be saying, like, hey, you did a great job here, or hey, you really dropped the ball here, and not just saying it, but documenting it so that we can use it when it actually needs to be used for those conversations. And it's doing that more often than those formalized time periods. So yes, continuous, it can mean many different things, it's a spectrum, but it really is just rather than having one point of input, having as many as you can,
Yeah.
but you need tools to support that.
Yeah, it's something I talk a lot about, and I've always talked about. I feel like I'm always repeating myself on this, what I talk about. But, you know, you can't take the manager, and we're gonna talk a lot of AI out of this, but you can't take the manager, you can't take the leadership out of this. A lot of times it's, well, we're not trying to replace the conversations your manager's having. We're just trying to take the data from those conversations and make that more actionable. But, tools are meant to support people, and both the manager and the employee. So, how do you do that correctly? From your opinion, how do you do continuous feedback the best way?
Yeah. So again, I'm trying to not sound salesy. That's not the point of doing this.
No,
But
we're just talking.
no, in any tool, if it's not our tool, they're generally set up to be like s- a question asking, and then you're responding to these prompts, providing your feedback. As you said, it's supporting what the manager's already doing within supporting those conversations. So to us, it's how can we do that as quickly and easily and as unobtrusively as possible? You're doing it already. We don't want to get in the way of other stuff you're doing. So rather than be sending a full survey that someone has to like initiate and you have to go interact with it, as I mentioned, our way is, we're going to tell you, hey, now's a good time for some feedback. If you happen to have some, send you a Microsoft Teams message that says, hey, what feedback do you have for this person? Or asking them to rate that person in a certain performance competency and then collecting it in that way. So in our case, it's you probably already think about it, spend 10 seconds telling us about it, and then forget about us and go back, do what you're doing. And as a result of that, we've collected all this really good stuff for Jamie to use next time she hops into the lab.
Well, that's one of the things that's always attracted me, just the conversations with you, is that even without selling, work story, these are all pretty good universal truths that whether you're using your platform specifically
Yeah.
as a
Yes.
tool or not, this is all really good. These are good points to keep in mind when you're thinking about feedback or reviews, as a base level.
Yeah.
Frequency, don't wait to the end, have your data aggregated, make sure it's actionable. These are all baselines outside of your platform. Your platform's just how you've taken your vision, focus, and perceived need in the market and put it together.
Yeah. No, we're just one of many ways we like our way, but look, many of the teams we work with go are like, hey, we do Word docs and spreadsheets, and they come to us, and if we're not a fit, then I'll say, hey, just you're doing it once a year, do it twice a year, or do it quarterly. Like find ways of making that happen more often, and if there are tools that can help you do it more easily, find those tools. But you're totally right. The principles around it are basically just doing more often however you can, and there are all these fantastic benefits that come out as a result.
So I'm going to go off script here for you. I think you'll
Sure.
handle this curveball fine. But it just popped
Cool.
into my head, like a lot of rating and a lot of performance management. There's the manager's going to rate you. You rate yourself now. Like it didn't used to be as much. You rate yourself. Do you have a thought on that? Does your platform do that? Is there a focus on that? Like, I've heard both sides, and it's tends to be a little bit. It's more common now than it was. So, wanted to get your thoughts.
No, I'll try in not so long-winded fashion, which is, so to speak to our system, yes, we can support any sort of review, manager to team member to manager, peers reviewing team members, whatever the mix needs to be. From like a philosophical perspective, I feel that getting more input, regardless of who it's coming from, is great. You can always filter those answers out if you need to, or use them in the conversation. Having more data from more people, more feedback from more people you work with in different capacities is just going to contribute to a more accurate representation of that person's performance over whatever period of time you're measuring. If it's just a manager and that manager doesn't work with that person all the time, then that's not going to be a helpful review conversation to have. So just personally, I feel, yeah, totally cool. Ask everyone to evaluate themselves, have the manager evaluate them. If you can get peer evaluation, and if you need to, you can take what you need to make the conversation more appropriate. But having the traditional, just the manager being the only one, I feel is a outdated way of going process.
Yeah, we used to do 360 reviews in my previous company. And it's kind of that bridge between employee surveys and performance management. Some people call it performance management. I don't think it should be, but there's a lot of benefit to getting a lot of different perspectives included in the mix. And it doesn't mean all those perspectives are actionable. You know, in the case of employee rate yourself, like the benefit is the manager can see what that perception is. A negative could be it shows the reviewee the gap between what they think they're doing and that, and it could be a barrier. So it's all about execution, right?
Right. It's not always easy to do those things. That's probably the biggest hurdle that I have to overcome on a daily basis. But I'm sure in people listening, that's also what they're thinking is, yeah, I'd love to do these things. It's just going to take too much time, or I don't have the ability to do these. So yeah, finding the right mix of tools to support and time to dedicate to setting it up on the front end is helpful. But I'm with you. Like, you will identify so many gaps just by asking these questions of other people. You can learn if people are really happy with working with one another, or if they're not really happy with working. Or you can learn if someone reviews way too high or isn't very good at giving constructive feedback. Like, all of these things can be captured by doing all these other question asking methods. If you just rely on the more traditional way, then you're kind of missing out on this other information.
So I want to get back into, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to do the HR hot sauce live, ready to go here in a second. But
let's go.
When we get back, I do want to talk about that traditional, and I want to highlight, we're not bagging on anybody that you're doing it wrong if you're doing an annual performance review.
I sound pretty bad.
And I tend to be, I come across that way too. It's more of, there's just other ways to think about it. And I want to open people's eyes that that's not the only way, and kind of get into the history of the annual review, what some of the resistance is that people listening may be going, these guys are full of it. I'm sticking with my review. I want to work through that whole piece and then talk about how you're integrating kind of some of the benefits of AI too. So kind of the then to now, and let's tie it all together.
Sounds great.
With that, let's get started on the HR hot sauce. Matt, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm pumped. Let's go.
All right.
Prepping, sort of kind of mentally trying to get in the zone, studying previous podcast episodes. So hopefully I can answer pretty well.
You're better prepped than I am, because I did not study and I felt like I flubbed my way through my hot sauce in episode 1.
No, come on. No, the fun of it is being
That's
organic.
the goal, right?
And exactly.
I was a true guest. All right. Number 1, what most engages you?
What most engages me, I mean, I have to speak to like what I'm doing, I think, to some degree, but it's when I see people organically talking about benefit from the way we're doing things, like LinkedIn posts or just the random emails. I'm like super pumped by that stuff.
Love it. What is your favorite piece of technology that you use in your work?
I mean, yeah, I'm on my laptop all the time, so I think it makes sense to answer this with like tools I'm using in my laptop. So I use like Figma all the time for like Yeah, mock-ups, designs, but also just like planning purposes for us and the team. I started using a new tool this week, which I'm loving. I'm just going to pull it up now. It's called Superlist. Recently came out a couple of guys from previous like to-do list application, but this thing is very cool. So I would totally recommend Superlist.
Sweet. I'll look it up. We'll put a link to that in the notes. What's your favorite interview question to ask or be asked?
It might sound a little simplistic, but I come across this a lot. People ask me what I do. And that's kind of weird having to answer in this like, software company sort of thing. And then they follow up with like, oh, what is it? And having to explain what WorkStory does out of nowhere is always a fun sort of thing.
What's your favorite workday lunch?
So quite apt, I would say. I am very big on the Trader Joe's frozen burritos, which I got to throw some hot sauce on to spice it up a little bit. So I know it's kind of funny and simplistic, but very good.
I'm just going to take the last question and ask it now. Mild, medium, hot, or nuclear hot sauce on that burrito?
So I was thinking about this. The sauce is medium in terms of spiciness, but it's typically because anything putting hot sauce on, I'm going for volume as opposed to spice level. So if it's chicken wings, I'm going for as many wings as I can get. If it's noodles, something like that, I'm going for as much as I can. So I keep it in the medium range.
Love the volume call out. What's your most unique or useless skill?
Unique, useless, big into urban sketching. So whenever I travel or things like that, if I always got a sketchbook, I use.
I'm learning here. What makes your day at work?
Making my day is, I would say, two things. One is absolutely crushing a sales call. I
hear that.
I would call myself introverted. So I get nervous before every single call, no matter how many I do. So coming out of that feeling good is really energizing for me. But on top of that, at the end of the day, since my days are kind of all different, if I have checked off most of the to-dos, then I feel really good, because that's just not an easy thing to do.
Hear to that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully we didn't burn your tongue. You made it through the HR hot sauce.
Yes, thank you.
Let's get back to our conversation. All right. So I had introed kind of part 2 of our convo, the annual review. So why does everyone do it? Like, where did that, I read somewhere that, GE, the old Jack Welch, they came up with what, the 1 to 5, the standard review that most companies know of. And everybody just kind of went, yeah, all right, well, they're smart. They're good. And not every company's GE. Most of the companies I talk to are 150,000,
Yes.
5,000, 10,000. You're still not GE. So, my initial thought is, well, yes, they're smart people, but is that the smartest move for you? From your experience, people you talk to, and from your understanding, why the annual review? Where does it come from, and why is it so widely used?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's just, that's the way it's sort of always been done. I think there are also some I'd have to go back and read through. There are also some military inspiration from how that got started. And people adopted it from there. And G, as you mentioned, played a huge role in that. So when it comes to organizations or companies nowadays, I really think it just starts off with, we have a team of a specific size. We don't need to do performance reviews. We talk with each other. We work with each other every day. People know how well they're then they grow to a certain size and they're like, okay, we should probably start formalizing this, because we have to start making more serious personnel decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But I need to go about it in a way that takes minimum time and effort. And then they just naturally gravitate to, oh yeah, let's do this conversation once a year. And it starts off very informally and slowly formalizes into, okay, we're going to do documents for documentation, do Word docs, spreadsheets, whatever. And then as the company grows, they realize they're spending more and more time on that setup, and they need to reduce the time and effort. So they expand from there into exploring these alternatives. So as you sort of mentioned, it's not bad. It's just what suits you at your specific time. but then being able to realize that team has matured to where it no longer makes sense or it's no longer as helpful as it once was. So I think that's why annual starts off that way.
Yeah, I think it falls into that bucket of people just didn't think about, like, we do a review, so I do it and then I'm done with it. It's one of those pockets of HR where people didn't go, wait a minute, should I change this? Is there another way? And I think that pocket's starting to open its doors a little bit to that question. So
No, I think also just people, oh, sorry, not to interrupt
no,
you.
go.
Just to add as well, technology plays a huge role in that. Before, back in the day, we didn't have computers to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And so, okay, it was going to be pen and paper. And then, okay, now we have computers. So now we can do web-based pen and paper, the document sort of form.
Yeah.
But as new stuff comes out, new tools that we interact with, AI, as you mentioned, we'll go into, there are these new opportunities, but people need to be educated about them in order to realize that there are options there. So a lot of it's just, we don't know what is out there, doing some exploration.
Yeah. Question, can your tool be used for an annual review if you want to collect throughout the year, but then aggregate it for, that moment in time that a lot of companies, we want to have that moment in time where we give a review, we attach a raise to it, we attach, different pieces to it. Would your tool do that? I hope it.
Yeah. So yes, it does. We're not here we realize that, like, we can go too far off the deep end. So we exist to serve teams in.
Yeah, I can't disagree. And we really are at that inflection point of new technology. And now there's the newest technology, AI. Everyone's talking about it. I don't think everybody really totally understands it. And I think people talk about it as though it's where we're going to be at 5 years from now or 10 years from now. I think there's where we're at right now, AI conversation, and where it's going, AI conversation, are two totally different things. But how are you leveraging AI, that new technology today, to help with this process?
Yeah, good question. It seems like every day there's like new companies popping up or existing tools throwing AI into their system. Like I just saw LinkedIn, I think last week, at least on my end, like I'm now getting served with, making comment suggestions on posts or here are ideas for new posts, which is just an AI application for them. So, I mean, in our system, we basically we didn't want to be, we're just throwing it in there for the sake of saying we have AI. That's just not helpful to anyone. So we backed into it by saying, how can it be most helpful to our users? And then does that make sense for us to spend our resources trying to integrate it? So the way we have started doing it is in a couple of different ways, but they're all built around helping you to write more effective feedback and understand how well people are performing. So summarizing performance. So one application, just to speak more specifically quickly, one application is anytime you hop into a team member you manage, we give you a summary of how they've been performing over the trailing 90 days. So here's how well things have been going, and also here are 3 recommendations for them to focus on or opportunities for improvement. Perfect design for saving you time, seeing how well they're doing, giving the employee a quick summary of how well things are going lately, and you guys can have a much more informed check-in conversation whenever it's appropriate, especially if a manager's not sort of tied into the daily activities of a person. That's exactly what that's there for, and we think that's a great way of doing it. What we've now started doing is if you're providing someone with feedback in the system, we will coach you on your feedback.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of teams, they sort of, that's a point that they lack is, not everyone is educated on how to provide constructive feedback to one another. And so we'll take their comment and we'll say, here's how you can improve it, make it more effective when you're sharing it. So that's another way. And then the coolest way, in my opinion, which is very, very polarizing, is we now have what I like to call a one-click performance review.
Oh.
This is designed to be pure time saving. element wherein you go to create performance review for a team member, you elect to use the AI system to do so optionally, and then it will look at all the feedback for the year, all the performance scores, all the goal updates they provided, and it'll write all the performance review notes for you.
Wow.
So I think that's okay from the standpoint of it's all based on your feedback that you've been providing. It's not sort of hallucinating.
So it kind of takes out some of the bias too.
Because because it's combining everything. Right. It's you, and also it's combining everyone else who you decide to include in that performance review. So if you were doing 360, like you mentioned earlier, it will take your feedback, it'll take that person's peer feedback, it'll take their direct report feedback, and it'll throw it all together. So that you basically click, and 10 to 30 seconds later, you have a fully written performance review, which you're free to edit or delete everything that it had come up with. But again, it's all designed around performance review takes a lot of time. How do we reduce the amount of time and effort so that you can focus more on developing the employee?
Yeah, there's a quote I use on a lot of my outreach when I'm talking to folks. It's from Sage. It says 76% of the C-suite believes HR is focused primarily on administrative tasks. And I feel like that's one of those pieces that I'm trying to push back on, that it sounds like this is one of those use cases where AI actually can have a real difference on pushing back on that administrative function without adding a ton of bias, adding a lot of the negative buzz around AI. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I something that I feel strongly about is, HR, people and culture managers, anyone in that sort of role, you are sort of the representation of the workforce, in my opinion, within the organization. You should be so tapped in to how everyone's doing, how everyone's feeling, engaging. Are they engaged? Running those surveys, things like that. You should be the voice of the employees when it comes to higher level decision making. You are not solely this administrative person who's just like paperworking around. You are the embodiment of the culture of the organization, so to speak, in some way. And you're the go-to for all those sorts of conversations. So I feel strongly in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I love that. Like, there's that debate, like HR can't create the company's culture. But what HR can do is understand it, create systems to drive it, create systems to help engage lots of people. And inevitably, when you're doing it right, you've got a crap ton of data. You've got so many different touch points, onboarding, offboarding, performance reviews. You've got all this data. It's really hard not to end up administrative, let alone compliance, benefits, the 8 million things HR folks are doing. And that's the fight I'm always talking about is you need data to be good. You can't spend all your time just in systems doing it. So any stone you can turn up and try to find a way to take that time-consuming data and focus more on actioning it, not administering it, building it, writing, etc. I'm all for. And, that's one of the reasons I like ADP. My, giant company I work for, like that's all we're about is how do we streamline. Yeah. And to note, we have performance management. So any of my ADP people listening, I'm talking to a guy that's got a different solution. This really is a holistic conversation. It's not about selling you on my tool or Matt's tool. It's about how do we make things better, and different strokes for different folks, different systems for different companies. I want to talk about all of it, and I really appreciate these perspectives, and I think they're pretty universally interesting for anybody out there in HR trying to balance all this nonsense of admin and strategic, and like, who am I? Where am I going? What do I do? Like, this is the nuts and bolts of the kind of conversations I love.
No, I'm totally with you. Look, if you're a current ADP customer or prospective ADP customer, amazing. Take some of these thoughts, if you agree with them, and apply it using their tools. Like, their tools are world class, for a reason. Like, I would actually, Tom, I'm going to talk with you afterwards, talk about integrating with ADP later on down the line. But but no, see, I'm totally with you. These are all like this, and this is why I'm a listener of your podcast, because you have these people who are in these different areas. I am not an HR person. I am not an HR expert. I try to be in educating myself, but listening to all of these perspectives, people talking about all these different areas informs me. So if I can contribute to that, fantastic. But no, it's just great to hear what everyone's thinking, what everyone's working on, and then you can be better at your job as a result of it.
Yeah, it's no one's telling you what to think or believe. It's, gathering information and make your own decisions based on what you believe. So, along that, what is some of the resistance that you've heard? What are your objections? What is the resistance to this? And I'm sure a lot of listeners are like, oh, I already got my list, but...
right there. They're just naming them off right as I'm talking.
Yeah. But I mean, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? I want to talk about both sides of the coin here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the main, the good fight that I have to fight every day is most organizations are going from annual and realizing we want tools to support us. And as soon as I come in and say the word continuous, they freak out because they feel like it's more time and more effort. And I have to spend my time trying to, and I probably, educate myself in being a better salesperson too, doing all these demos and things like that. But I have to spend my time trying to help them overcome or weigh the possible benefits of changing your thoughts around time and effort versus what the outputs are from an annual review or prospectively doing it more often. And so the objective I get is they're so ingrained in this is how it's always been done, to go back to our conversation about the GE thought process. This is how it's been done. I don't want to do it differently. I just need a tool that allows me to do it online. And I come in here saying, okay, I get that. We can sort of kind of do that for you, but why not challenge yourself in thinking about it on a deeper level of why are you actually doing performance reviews? And then, oh, okay, are you actually accomplishing that goal or not? And then why not? So that's the big thing is people are very, very set in their ways. And anytime they hear more time potentially or more effort potentially, they are allergic to that.
Yeah, it always brings me back to this comic. I feel like it's a New Yorker comic, but I can't quote it. I'll see if I can dig it up somewhere. But it's, these guys with swords and armor marching into battle. And there's a guy with a tent with a little Gatling gun, like an early Gatling gun in the tent. He's like, hey, let me talk to you about something that can help enable you and save. I don't have time for that. We have a battle to fight. And I think it really
exactly.
It captured that it really is hard to force yourself, for me personally, to stop and go, can I take a little bit more here to save exponential there? And, that's the tough part is kind of fighting that. So I encourage all of our listeners to challenge yourself. We all have jobs we're trying to get through. We're trying to get home to our kids. I post about what makes me tick today. Some of it's, half of it's making work better. Half of it's doing this. The other half's my family. And trying to balance that is hard. But I also constantly am looking and catch myself and looking inward. And Laura Mazzullo and I talked about this on a previous episode. Just really looking at yourself in the mirror at how you look at everything else out there. And when you do that, you do find that, I can take this on and I do see the benefit. Because if your goal is to work less or to work easier, you can get there. It just takes that inflection point of stop, listen, and realize there's a better way.
No, I fully agree with everything you're saying, which is fantastic. No, I think to make it personal for a second, you were talking about your family and stuff like that. My day is defined by making sure I follow up on all, my CMS to-do items. I have to, all this sales stuff and then what marketing, blah, blah, blah. And there's not a lot of time taken out. And recently I had a sort of epiphany realization of I haven't actually stopped to think about how I'm working or if I'm working all in the business versus in the business. And I was way too in the business. I still am way too in the business. I need to be more strategic, but I can't do that unless I give myself time to stop and think. Something I suffer from is I don't feel like I'm being productive if I'm not using all the hours of my day to do something to drive the business. I feel like I'm being lazy or something like that, but it's not. It's really, no, you do need to take time, think about what you're doing. It doesn't have to be work related. It can be other stuff that you're doing, but like you need to pause, reflect on your process, your way of thinking about things, realize it's okay, and then what's your ultimate goal that you're trying to get to? Maybe reset around that ultimate goal. So just my like personal mental check-in, I guess, that inspired by what you were saying about your family.
No, that's great. And that's step one. So anyone listening, do your check-in. You may end up aligned, you may not. For me, it's when I go running or I'm on a chairlift at the ski slope. That's where I always have my like strategic, like, wait a minute, what if I did this? Or what if I looked at that? Or I've totally ignored this piece of something I should be focused on. So, it's, the general's not in a foxhole for a reason. You can't make strategic battlefield decisions if you're just trying not to get shot in the head and you're stuck in the front lines in a foxhole. Get outside of your foxhole, whoever you are, wherever you are, find that time and make that time. So, Matt, this has been a great conversation. I want to end with where I used to begin my podcasts. I want to talk about, I'll give you a two-pronged question, which is like podcasting, like no. But one, what are you listening to? Favorite podcast, music, books, like whatever the heck it is. What are you listening to? And then just flow right into where people can find you.
Yeah, sure. So what I'm listening to, I'm an avid podcast listener. So Freakonomics, big fan of that.
Great podcast.
Revisionist History, love that. Malcolm Gladwell, I think he's great at storyteller. And recently started listening to Cautionary Tales, also really good sort of history podcast with storytelling. And where can people find me? I would say just like LinkedIn, Twitter. Meadows M on all of those things, LinkedIn/MeadowsM or Twitter or X, or Twix as we learned on right. Fantastic. Love that. John didn't take credit for it, but we will credit him with that.
We will credit him for amplifying.
But yeah, exactly. Meadows M, where I'm at.
Perfect. We will put links to all those podcasts, all of that. Matt, wish you and WorkStory all the best. Always excited when we talk. Your just energy's awesome. Leaves me motivated. So thank you for carving out time of your crazy day to have this conversation.
No, thank you. Thank you as well. Hopefully I can take some of that energy into this house move I got to deal with on Saturday. But seriously, no, thank you for having me. It's like so cool. I feel like I've been on the outside looking in. Like I've been trying to participate a little bit more with the HR community, especially on Twitter, and seeing all the same people, knowing everyone else and talking with each other and meeting up at HR Tech and events like that is cool, but I feel like an outsider. So now I feel like I'm like okay, people have recognized me, which is cool. So being able to be in this context is awesome, and just hopefully can help give me a better education, again, with regard to HR, and hopefully I can translate that into helping people down the line. But yeah, thank you so much again for giving me your time.
HR community is one of the best communities. If you're here for the right reasons, you're always welcome. That's what I've found, and that's part of what gets me doing what I do. So thank you. And we're going to go lead out with our break signals outro. Better, because we're trying to get better every day, baby. Thank you for listening. We'll see you back for our next episode of Tom's Engaging HR. Thanks, everybody.